In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, July 15th, here in South Korea. The latest trade numbers show the country's tech exports surged over 31% on year in June to post $21 billion amid global demand for semiconductors. Meanwhile, over in the U.S. this past weekend, former President Donald Trump survives an apparent assassination attempt during a campaign rally in Butler County, Pennsylvania. World leaders in response have condemned the act of political violence. And speaking of violence, Israel mounts one of its deadliest air operations targeting Hamas in Gaza this past weekend that have also inflicted heavy civilian casualties, casting a dark shadow over prospects of a ceasefire in the near future. An assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump continues to make headlines in the U.S. amid ongoing investigations into the motive behind the shocking event. Our Shin Ha-young starts us off.
The U.S. Secret Service is investigating the circumstances surrounding an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump during a rally in Pennsylvania on Saturday local time. Authorities identified the gunman who attacked Trump as Thomas Matthew Crooks, a 20-year-old man from Pittsburgh. CNN reported that Crooks fired at Trump from a building rooftop outside the rally's security perimeter before he was killed by the Secret Service. The FBI says he acted alone using an AR-style rifle believed to have been bought by his father, and there are currently no public safety concerns. According to the New York Times, Crooks came from a typical middle-class background with mixed political views. He was registered as a Republican while his mother was a Democrat and his father a Libertarian. In a primetime national address from the Oval Office on Sunday, U.S. President Joe Biden warned of the risks of political violence in the U.S., saying it's time to cool it down.
My fellow Americans, I want to speak to you tonight about the need for us to lower the temperature in our politics. And to remember, while we may disagree, we are not enemies. You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down.
Earlier Sunday, Biden condemned the attempted assassination of Trump, calling for the nation to come together as one and announcing an independent security review to investigate how the attack occurred. Trump's aide said he was in great spirits and doing well after the shooting, which resulted in an injury to his right ear. According to the Butler County District Attorney, one spectator at the rally died in the shooting while another is in a serious condition. Trump took to social media some 13 hours after the shooting to thank those who prayed for him and urged Americans to stand united and show their true character as Americans. Trump also stated he would stick to his schedule despite the shooting. He arrived in Milwaukee on Sunday for the Republican National Convention, where he is set to be named the party's presidential nominee later this week. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
And President Yoon Suk-yeol has denounced the shocking attempt at former U.S. President Donald Trump's life. In a post on X earlier on Sunday, that is, he shared his shock at, quote, the hideous act of political violence, while adding hopes for a prompt recovery. Later, his spokesperson Kim Soo-kyung also released a statement condemning political violence in all its forms and sharing South Korea's solidarity with America amid this alarming incident. Other world leaders, including Britain's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, were among those who conveyed their words of support to Mr. Trump while censuring the shocking act of violence. Also, President Yoon Suk-yeol sought strength through solidarity against geopolitical strife with like-minded partners at this year's NATO Summit in Washington, D.C. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young wraps up his latest U.S. agenda. Do take a listen.
South Korea has stepped up as a vital contributor to global security as President Yoon Suk-yeol called for greater solidarity between the Indo-Pacific and NATO countries in supporting Ukraine and deterring Russia and North Korea's military cooperation. With Moscow and Pyongyang's treaty forged last month posing an immediate threat to the Indo-Pacific region, the South Korean leader first made a two-day visit to Hawaii to show the strength of hold on Washington's alliance at the US Indo-Pacific Command. The two allies later ramped up deterrence, establishing guidelines for the Nuclear Consultative Group formed last year, which directly involves Seoul in Washington's planning for nuclear contingencies. As President Yoon also stressed the connection between Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security, Seoul gained solidarity from NATO and its partners with the condemnation of the Russia-North Korea treaty in various joint statements. Yoon said it's because of enablers like North Korea supplying Moscow with ammunition that the war in Ukraine has stretched on. He then pledged to double South Korea's contribution towards a trust fund for Ukraine that provides non-lethal military supplies.
So we may want him to send weapons directly to Ukraine, but that would be against South Korean law. They would have to change the law first. And aside from maybe the US and others, I see few countries doing as much as South Korea to replenish European armaments that are supplying Ukraine. And certainly he's saying all the right things and contributing humanitarian relief and arms to the countries helping Ukraine.
Meeting with NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg, Yoon also welcomed agreements on sharing information on North Korea's weapons in Ukraine and mutually recognizing airworthiness certificates, making South Korea the first Asian country to have its domestically certified aircraft accepted by NATO members. This would increase interoperability between the two sides, as well as market opportunities. In fact, with Seoul's diverse portfolio of advanced industries crucial to national and economic security, President Yoon held talks with over 10 world leaders on bilateral cooperation spanning defence industry with Germany, infrastructure with Finland, nuclear energy plants with the Czech Republic, and space technology with Sweden.
South Korea is still structured around that imminent threat from North Korea, which they live with every day, only 26, 27 miles away from Seoul. So I think South Korea brings an awareness and a battle readiness that maybe other countries don't have, plus its superior technology. I think it's the 10th largest arms exporter in the world and is really helpful in backfilling some of the European armaments that have been shipped to Ukraine. I know
South Korea, as part of the Indo-Pacific 4 countries with Japan, Australia and New Zealand, has been working with NATO on Ukraine support, cyber defence, countering disinformation and artificial intelligence. Going forward, President Yoon said Seoul hopes to institutionalize and expand cooperation between the two blocs to jointly cover areas like the Global South, maritime security, cybersecurity, non-proliferation and counter-terrorism. Seong, Arirang News.
Seoul's Unification Ministry says Pyongyang's recent disclosure of pictures showing the burning of leaflets sent from South Korea is highly unusual. The ministry on Monday pointed out the leaflets were floated across the border by civic groups based here in South Korea, given their freedom of expression, and reaffirmed the government's stance to respond sternly to any act of provocation from North Korea. Back on Sunday, in a statement carried by the state media, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, warned of retaliation against the latest South Korean leaflets, vowing a, quote, very high price. And this past Sunday, South Korea observed its first celebration of a special day designated to North Koreans who chose to cross the border into South Korea in search of freedom from oppression. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has details.
Tears and emotions filled the room as songs and messages celebrated the courage of North Korean defectors and their journey escaping North Korea, as well as giving encouragement to overcome their struggles and adapt to a new life in South Korea. Sunday was the first ever North Korean Defectors Day, with the main celebration at the former presidential Blue House. President Yoon, who signed the law to designate July 14th as a day celebrating defectors, promised to take care of those who came seeking freedom as he hosted around 200 North Korean defectors.
우리 정부는 자유를 향한 여러분의 발걸음이 헛되지 않도록 하겠습니다. 대한민국을 찾는 북한 동포를 어떠한 일이 있더라도 단 한 분도 돌려보내지 않을 것입니다.
He also condemned North Korea's human rights violations, referring to the first of its kind government publication, the report on North Korean human rights from last year, and said resolving this issue will be the foundation of the unification. And taking care of the defectors is the beginning, with around 34,000 North Korean defectors currently in South Korea.
탈북민 여러분을 포용하는 것이 북한 인권을 개선하는 첫 걸음이 될 것입니다. 저는 오늘 대한민국이 여러분께 희망의 보금자리가 될 수 있도록 정착, 역량, 화합의 세 가지 약속을 드리고자 합니다.
In terms of settlement, President Yoon vowed to improve the settlement support fund and help defectors with supported savings accounts. For capability, the government will provide them with more employment opportunities with benefits for companies that hire defectors. And finally, harmony. The government is looking to tackle discrimination while offering mentoring programs with already arrived defectors helping newcomers. Yoon also re-emphasized that as North Korea are South Korean citizens, protecting them is essential for achieving true unification. In the meantime, people outside of South Korea also joined in with messages of encouragement.
We have had the privilege of meeting a few North Korean defectors and
some of the strongest people in the world, strongest and most courageous people in the world. And we're really proud of you and just want to encourage you to follow your dreams.
In the meantime, President Yoon also met with the Little League Baseball team of young North Korean defectors, the Challengers, to send them off for a trip to the U.S. President Yoon congratulated them on their journey to the birthplace of baseball, the United States, as future national team players of a free and unified Korea. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Around 15% of the North Koreans crossing into South Korea are minors, and one man has dedicated his life to making them a new and safe home here. Our Choi Soo-young shares his story of charity and compassion.
Kim Tae-hoon has looked after 26 boys. His life, which was quite ordinary after graduating from art school, changed dramatically due to one unexpected night at Hanawan, the settlement support center for North Korean defectors.
It all started as a volunteer activity. I met a child at Hanawan who was left alone. The child asked if I could stay the night, and I thought, why not? So I stayed. It's been 20 years from that night.
For the past 20 years in the group home, Kim has looked after children who defected without any family. There are 8 group homes across the country, but Kim's is the only one operated by an individual. Currently, 8 boys aged from elementary school to their early 20s live with Kim, and for them, he is more than a parent.
He changed my destiny. If I hadn't met him, I don't know how my life would have turned out. He's my parent and the pillar of our home.
Some people think of the group home like a dormitory, but I've never thought of it that way. To me, it always felt like a home with just a lot of children.
Kim Sung, currently in his last year of high school, and Tong Ryong, a sociology student, both desire to give back to South Korean society just as their Uncle Kim did for them.
Since I received so much from my uncle, I want to give back to others as much as I can.
We talked a lot about what I love, what I am good at even if I'm not perfect at it. He helped me approach life that way.
Kim Tae-hoon is unmarried and is about to turn 50. He has never regretted his choice to look after the children who defected from the north.
I have never wanted to quit, yet I've been worried about how long I can handle living with the boys. But even if given another chance, I wouldn't change a thing. Living with the boys has been incredibly fun, though also very challenging. I've learned so much from them.
Most of Kim's charges have graduated from college and are now living stable and healthy lives as a nurse, employees at major companies and international volunteers. Some have moved from Seoul to the countryside to start new lives. Just 5 kilometers away from the DMZ in Cheon-gangwon province, where you can see North Korea, a few children from the community are together running the northernmost brunch cafe. Wonil and Jimbom, living in this community since 2016, have settled in Cheolwon near the North Korean border and opened a cafe called Open the Moon.
The name Open the Moon means opening the doors of closed hearts, embracing different cultures, and opening the door to reunification of South and North Korea.
Jimbom grew up alone when he was in the north, but is now part of a large family, working as a barista and a farmer. He tends to a small garden behind the cafe and finds happiness in his daily work.
I lived alone as far as I can remember and didn't know what a family was. But after meeting my uncle and brothers, I finally have a family. In the north, I never had my own field to farm. I always worked on others' land, so I dreamed of cultivating my own field someday.
The cafe has become a popular spot for visitors from all over the country.
The air is great, and the atmosphere here is wonderful. But it's heartbreaking to see North Korea so close but unreachable.
After opening the cafe, Wonil has even bigger dreams.
I plan to organize a unification peace camp where people of all ages can participate, because I want to do something meaningful starting here in Cheolwon.
Kim says he hopes his children can live confidently in Korean society.
What I'm most proud of is that our boys have no shadows on their faces. Despite the heartbreaking past they had to endure, they have bright smiles and faces now, and I'm thankful for that. I hope they continue to dream confidently and live well.
The boys might have come to South Korea alone, but they are achieving their dreams as a family. Jeju, Arirang News.
Korea's tech exports jumped over 31% on year in June yet again, bolstered by semiconductor shipments overseas. Our correspondent Lee Soo-jin has the latest trade numbers.
Semiconductors once again led the increase in South Korea's tech exports last month. Data released by the Trade Ministry on Monday shows that ICT exports in June reached $21 billion. That's an increase of 31.1% compared to the same time the previous year. It's also the largest ever recorded for the month of June and the third straight month that tech exports have seen an on-year increase of more than 30%. This was driven by outbound shipments of chips also reaching a record high last month. Chip exports surpassed a previous record set in March 2022 on the back of growth in the AI market and a recovery in the sales of IT devices. Memory chip exports were especially high thanks to the increased demand for high-value products like high-bandwidth memory chips. As for other tech exports, display saw double-digit export growth for the 5th consecutive month, and computers also saw a rise for the 6th straight month. By country, South Korea's exports to China, the nation's biggest destination for ICT exports, saw an on-year increase for the 8th consecutive month in June. Shipments to other nations such as the United States and the European Union also rose, but there was a slump in exports to Japan. Meanwhile, ICT imports last month dropped 5.1% on year due to fewer inbound shipments of chips and rechargeable batteries. As for the first half of the year, ICT exports rose 28.2% to $109 billion, the second largest amount of exports on a 6-month basis. This was also driven by outbound shipments of chips rising nearly 50% on year on the back of strong demand. During the January to June period, other tech exports such as displays and computers saw a double-digit increase compared to the previous year, but shipments of mobiles and telecommunication devices fell. And exports to China during this period rose more than 37% on year. Imports, on the other hand, fell on year, leading to a trade surplus of $41 billion. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
In other news, letters of resignation tendered by the country's doctors in training earlier in February are now looking to be processed by their respective hospitals. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us what this means.
Training hospitals across the country will finally submit and process resignation letters written by trainee doctors on Monday. However, before that, training hospitals sent text messages to trainee doctors requesting a final decision by noon the same day. If a resignation is confirmed or if there is no response, the hospital will process the letters and finalize the number of junior doctors not returning for work. The trainee doctors who refused to return since taking part in a massive walkout nearly 5 months ago are saying that the medical school admissions quota hike issue has not been fundamentally resolved. Despite this, the government is looking to speed up the process in order to confirm the number of trainee doctors to be recruited for the second half of the year. Despite the deadline issued by the government, trainee doctors do not believe many of their colleagues will return. According to the government, as of last Thursday, only 69 out of a total of 10,506 trainee doctors in all 211 training hospitals who submitted resignation letters had their resignation accepted. Also, the percentage of trainee doctors working at hospitals stood at 8%. A so-called blacklist of trainee doctors and medical students who have returned to work or classes was revealed online, further pressuring trainee doctors and medical students to continue their collective action despite Monday's deadline. The government said it will investigate the matter as it seeks to avoid a further vacuum within the country's medical system. 이승재, Arirang News.
Over in the Middle East, prospects of a peace deal are looking bleak as Israel mounted a fierce air offensive targeting Hamas in Gaza this past weekend that have also inflicted heavy civilian casualties. Our Yoon reports.
On Sunday, another school in the Nusayrat refugee camp in central Gaza was struck by Israeli airstrikes. At least 17 people, mostly women and children, were killed, and 80 were wounded in the strike on the UN-run Abu Araban school, which Gaza Civil Defence Agency says was housing thousands of displaced people. The Israeli military said the operation was against terrorists, who triggered the start of the war with their attack on Israel on October 7th. This is the fifth attack on a school since July 6th, with Israel saying that Hamas uses schools, hospitals, and other public infrastructure for military purposes, which Hamas denies. It also follows Israeli attacks on Saturday night on the Al-Mawasi refugee camp in Khan Yunis that killed at least 90 people and injured hundreds. The Israeli military claimed that the target of their attack on Saturday was Hamas commander Mohammed Deif and the commander of the Khan Yunis brigade Rafah Salameh. Israel has accused both of masterminding the Hamas-led October 7th attack on southern Israel. But with no confirmation of whether the targets were struck, Hamas says only defenseless civilians were killed. The Al-Mawasi attack on a designated humanitarian safe zone in Gaza was condemned by the United Nations and countries across the Middle East. Egypt, among mediators working toward a ceasefire deal, said that the ongoing violations would only add serious complications to reaching an agreement. Meanwhile, the United Nations says the attacks may have breached international law, adding to a UN report from March that Israel may be committing genocide in Gaza. 이은진, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The new week is starting off on a rainy note on Jeju with a monsoonal front dropping showers on the island. Jeju could see 30 to 80 millimeters of heavy rain today, while the south coast will also receive heavy showers pouring 20 to 30 millimeters an hour of downpours. Meanwhile, inner regions will see passing rain with 5 to 60 millimeters in the forecast today. So the moisture in the air will be combined with that heat, pushing feels like temperatures a couple of degrees higher. And it's chobok today, the onset of a searing heat wave with a heat advisory in place for the capital area, Chungcheongdo and Sejong City. Seoul gets up to 31 degrees. Daegu sees a highs of 28 degrees. But on a muggy day like today, food safety is a must. Monsoon rain looks to spread to more regions tomorrow. Central regions will see heavier monsoon rain this week. Jeju, however, will see fewer showers but will be hotter this week. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. So do stay with us. Thank you for now.